Jennifer Williams. She's the Director of Athletics at Alabama State currently. She's been there since 2018. Prior to that, she had stops at North Carolina A&T and DePaul University. She is also a former Division I basketball player at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Our second guest is Ashlyn Dunbar. She is a graduate student athlete, two-sport student athlete at the University of Oklahoma, where she is a member of the women's volleyball and women's basketball team. Was a first-team All Big 12 selection, as well as a All Southwest Region first-team selection. She's currently working on her master's in intercollegiate athletic administration, so we welcome her as well. The next guest we have is Sarah Edmonds. She's a recent graduate of Howard University, where she earned a bachelor's in sports management. She was a member of the women's basketball team, and she amassed over 1,000 points in her career, and was also a member of the All-MEAC second team. So thank you for joining us as well, Sarah. And then last but not least, we also have Tamika Smith-Jones, who's the Director of Athletics at University of California, Riverside. She had previous positions at the University of Texas, San Antonio, as well as she was a Director of Athletics at Clark Atlanta prior to University of Texas, San Antonio. She is also a former student athlete, where she participated in women's basketball and cross country at the University of Alabama A&M. So before we jump right into our questions, do kind of want to give a background on kind of what the voice of the Black student athlete has been kind of over the years. We start by just kind of some historical context of some different groups of people who have used their voice as it relates to Black student athletes using their voice on their college campuses. And when we think about that, if you're not familiar with situations such as the Black 14, which was members of the Wyoming football team, who basically wanted to wear Black armbands during their game against BYU to kind of protest the racial epithets that they experienced the year prior to in a game, as well as to talk about the Mormon rule, which was a rule that people of color, specifically Black people, cannot be priests in the Mormon tradition. So that's one situation where Black student athletes use their voice to protest or to speak out against some racial injustice that they experienced, as well as the Syracuse Nine, which were 9 Black football players who walked out of spring practice because their head coach reneged on hiring a Black football coach after he had promised those young men that he would. So these are just some of the experiences that our Black student athletes have had to deal with throughout the years that have caused their voice to not be heard and for them to speak up in ways to get their attention. And so we start, and I'll throw this question to Tamika and Jennifer. How has the voice of the Black student athlete changed over the years?
Just like an alley hoop or something, you know.
I know.
I'll start, Jennifer, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Daniel, for having us in this space and having this opportunity to share. I'm seeing so many faces and names that I have seen and may have not met over the years on social media and in our industry. So thank you for joining us. The Black athlete's voice over the years, that was a great segue into some of the history that has really transformed our landscape. But as a former student athlete and a former coach and now sitting athletic director, I would describe the Black athlete's voice over the years having been muted and have been probably a bit at risk if you know, they are expressing themselves in a way that, you know, maybe is not as comfortable to some. And so I'm super excited today to be able to engage in some real live dialogue and conversation because as a former athlete, I've experienced that. Yeah, I'll just tell you, couldn't nobody tell me nothing. Most of the people that know me on this call know. It's just one of those things where, you know, there are things that as people of color, that we have experienced and underrepresented, student athletes experience that the majority don't understand. And so, I appreciate the spaces and being able to understand the parallels of what people like John Carlos, who I had a chance to meet and bring him actually to my campus at Clark Atlanta University. I see Coach Jacobs on this call. I think he was my head men's basketball coach at that time. But also, the Ali's of the world. And now we have Sarah and Ashlyn and some others that are really taking a stand and understanding that their voice matters, that their collective voices matter. And we have far too long, tried to, I wouldn't say silence, because it's hard for us to be silenced in any way, but not allow us to speak and be fully who we are and who God created us to be. So I'll stop there and yield to Jennifer.
Thank you, Tamika, and thank you, Daniel, for also allowing for me to participate on this panel. I too agree with what Tamika articulated, but I also want to say I don't feel as if our voice, the voice of the student athlete, and I say our being a former student athlete, I don't think it's changed. I think we've been given the platform. I think we've been given a dynamic platform. We're now able to step out there and really say what we want to say. And I know, as 20 years ago, when I was a freshman in college, we felt the same way. We knew about the racial injustices and we spoke amongst each other, but we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have these different platforms to really be able to get our voice out there. So we had to go about it in different ways. But I do think having that platform has really given our Black student athletes that space to really get their point across and to really be seen. I want all of them to know that their voice matters and that they can make a difference. And I'm seeing so many young, starting even in high school, articulating what it means to them to feel a certain way. And I think putting that out there on social media is going to be that key, and it's going to start those conversations and really impact that change.
Wow. Well, we started off on a good note and some powerful stuff there. And so while we're talking about the voice of the Black student athlete, what better way to figure out this voice than to talk to some current and, recent graduates. So Sarah and Ashlyn, and I'll start with you, Sarah, and Ashlyn, it'll be the same question for you. When did you realize your voice mattered? And then what occurred that helped you to realize that your voice mattered?
I think for me, it was just learning about all the athletes that came before us and opened the doors for us, like Jim Brown, like Muhammad Ali, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and how they spoke up for what they believed in. And sports has always been a place where, we've been able to speak on political and social movements. So there's been athletes like Colin Kaepernick and LeBron James that, more recently have inspired me as well. LeBron James being told to shut up and dribble, and then stating, I'm more than an athlete. That was something that I could relate to. And, also just knowing what I was representing while I was playing basketball, Howard University, I felt like, why not me? Why wouldn't I speak up? Because you never know, who's watching and who your words can touch as well.
Ashlyn, how about you?
For me personally, I would say that I went through a lot of different experiences throughout college, especially as an athlete and with certain coaching staffs where it made me feel like I didn't want to say anything, not even just on social injustices, just like anything that would be controversial or that could possibly get my scholarship taken away or that I would not be able to play, I would be benched, anything like that. I kind of lived in a place of fear to even say anything because I didn't want the consequences that I thought would come with it. And then I ended up at some point saying, I deserve to be heard and that I matter. And so I think it was really within myself knowing that I mattered as a person and that I have valid reasons to be concerned and to speak up. And so I think for me, being silenced for such a long time, I was just like, I know how I felt and I know the place that I was in and I would never want anyone else to be in that place. And so I felt that it was so important for me to continue to speak up and feel and talk about the things that I feel are important and are right and also wrong with the world right now. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite because, you know, it's so hard when you see people who don't talk about the social injustices because you feel like, how can you be in support of this movement and not say anything about it? And so even though a lot of people have agreed with me, I didn't want to be like, I didn't want it to seem like I spoke for all Black student athletes, because that also seems to be an issue, that one person has to be the face for every single person in that racial group or anything like that. And so I just wanted to speak on my experiences and let other people know that they matter, especially for the people who feel like they can't say anything, who are in the position that I was in. I'm gonna speak for those people who can't. So.
Thank you both. I will ask, because we are getting a little feedback. So if you are not muted, please mute your microphone so that we don't have any excess noise in the back. But Sarah, and to Ashley, your points, thank you for being a voice for those Black student athletes who do not have a voice. There are some who are afraid of the repercussions that they may, receive for being, vocal and for speaking out. And it can't be easy to be the one who is speaking out. And I'm sure you both have probably received some backlash of some sort, whether it be at your, current institution from friends perhaps, or even, people who would identify themselves as your fans. And so I asked Tamika and Jennifer, how can the voice of the Black student athlete impact change or the landscape of college athletics?
I'll go ahead and start with that question. I would just like to say that the time is now. And, listening to Ashlyn and Sarah talk about some of their experiences and fears of not speaking out or being shunned, I think having student athletes start to speak out and show that it's okay, it's gonna inspire others to do that. So, stepping up to the plate now, I think it gives that platform where people can, where student athletes can be vocal about what they feel and not experience, I guess, as the backlash that they may have experienced, with thinking about scholarships being revoked, because people are getting called out. I think that a lot of folks are getting called out and they're getting read to a certain extent, and the student athletes are powerful. I serve on a lot of groups, and I'm hearing them talk about things that are affecting them. Not just a lot of things with mental health, the social and racial injustices, but they are understanding that their voice matters, and that adults and they're adults too, but seasoned adults like myself and athletic administrators, we're listening to them. We are genuinely listening to them, and change is coming. I see so many athletic departments starting to implement different programs to address some of these issues. And to me, that's a direct contribution to what these student athletes are doing, these student athletes of color are doing and saying and using their platform.
Tamika, did you want to jump in here? And
Yes, I'm used to people doing things for me. I thought you was gonna unmute me. Just kidding. Just lightening up the room here. Just to be clear, the backlash is coming. I'm supposed to be on a Black Athletic Directors Council meeting during this call, and so I'm missing that. But we understand that the backlash is coming. So everyone brace themselves. This is not going to be all allies on deck affair. It's just a matter of time. So
they're trying to get the stuff out of the wheels, right? Could get stuff off first.
Phone. Thank you. I would just like to, just make sure that as an athletic director, we understand that, the student athletes understand that we do have a role and responsibility in this. And I pride myself of being a mentor and model and illustration of hope. And I'm by no means perfect, but I am unapologetically who I am. And I show up fully every day with all that comes with me. And so I like to, empower my student athletes, not embolden, but empower them to do the same, because it's such a mental health crisis to suppress people's emotional intelligence, period. So when you're dealing with young people, you're dealing with coaches and staff who, I have to hold accountable. You want to make sure that you're giving them the resources and the constructive setups to be able to be expressive and have these conversations. And so one of the things that we did once everybody started putting their positions and statements out there, and I agree with our students that their silence was not an option. It was non-negotiable for me. And my chancellor put out a statement, and it didn't completely reflect what I wanted to express, which is why, I put out a statement as the leader of our program. And like Ashlyn said, I didn't want to speak for everybody, but as the leader, I felt like I needed to speak for our mission-driven work. And so that's what I just base a lot of my thoughts and philosophy us to be DEI. They recruit us for our diversity and the influence that we can bring so that we can recruit you. And then for you to show up and we can't allow you to enjoy your culture, your experience, we don't even take the time to understand what that is all about, is hypocritical to me. And so I try to make sure that our coaches get the support that they need. It is a fine line as a director to, kind of be a chameleon and be that support for them, not to get in their way, but to just be close enough to them that they can be as honest and open and transparent with you on things where they may fall short. They may need some help. And I do the same for our student athletes. I mean, I travel with our student athletes like most athletic directors, but I'm on the bus. I'm at meals with them. I get up, I get work done, and I'm trying to get in their space and shoot around so that I can build relationships, because a lot of this is about trust. And when you gain the trust of student athletes, coaches, staff, you can have these conversations. You can make these meaningful changes every day. And so I think that, if we can get back to the mission-driven work, everybody understand what their university is about, I think we'll attract the right students, we'll attract and recruit the right coaches, and we will embody the right experiences for all student athletes, Black students and other ethnicities as well.
Wow, I mean that's powerful, and I think the landscape is already changing. Honestly, we see so many schools, their student athletes saying until making demands and sticking to those demands. We've seen football programs. I saw UCLA's football program said until you guys bring us a third-party doctor as it relates to COVID specifically, we're not going to practice or work out because we don't trust our staff enough that they're going to, when we say we're not feeling well, to realize and understand what they may be going through. And other schools all across the country have already been receiving some of the same type of situations. And I think, it's only a matter of time before we start to see some of our student athletes really protest. And I hope we don't, but I'm sure we'll get to a point at some university where student athletes will not play in the middle of their season until they really begin to see the changes that they want to see. And so as we move forward, Ashlyn, you had a very powerful, Instagram, social media post, which is why you're on the panel. I reached out to you after seeing that because you were very outspoken. And for those of you who did not see her Instagram post or her social media post, she had a side-by-side picture, one of her protesting and a picture of her playing volleyball at the University of Oklahoma. And the caption on her picture said, "If you don't support me out here," meaning out protesting, standing up for Black Lives Matter in those situations, social injustices, then don't support me in here, meaning in the arena of sport. And I think that was just powerful. You talked about it earlier. So what was kind of your thought process behind the post? And the caption, because I think the caption was just as powerful as the post itself.
Yeah, I think the thought process behind that was just like personal experience. It's been so many times where I've seen, especially for my guy friends who play sports, that people have talked about them like, wow, they're such a great athlete. Like they're doing all these big things. They get these accolades. But I wouldn't want to a Black boy to date my daughter. I wouldn't want them in my family. I wouldn't want them in my life outside of sports. And I think that's like a part of the issue is how can you see me only as valuable when I can do something for you, but you can't see my life as a human being as valuable. So that was just kind of my thought process behind it. It's just like, we are more than just athletes. We are human beings first. We have lives outside of these sports. If I'm not safe out on the streets and I don't get to come into the gym and I don't get to put on this jersey and I don't get to perform, I don't get to win anything, I don't get to entertain you, and that's not my purpose. My purpose is to be who I am first. I'm a Black human female person before I come into the sports world and put on a jersey. And so I think it's so valuable important that we are valued as human beings and how we are as people before we are valued as athletes at the end of the day.
Well, thank you, Ashton. I mean, I think if we really wanted to, we could mic drop and end it there. As you know, people seeing, society seeing Black people first, but definitely as it relates to our student athletes as people first, and really understanding and being able to comprehend that we're human before we are your sports figure or your celebrity or your role model or whatever, backslash we want to use. And so, Sarah, you wrote an article, you attended a historical Black college and university, and you wrote an article kind of talking about the landscape changing as it relates to some of the big time athletes starting to attend historical Black colleges. And in your article, you had a quote that said, when Black student athletes realize their power and influence, they have the opportunity to force change. Can you expound on why you believe this?
Yes, I think that athletes just have a lot more power than people may think. As college athletes, we are also student leaders on campus. We help represent the school while playing the sport we love, and a lot of time and energy goes into that. So like when Black student athletes have power and influence, they have the opportunity to really force change. And I think we're seeing a lot of that right now. It's been so many student athletes that have been expressing themselves. They've been speaking out. Some have been transferring schools, and now some of the top athletes that are seriously considering HBCUs. And these are all things that, like Ashlyn said before, people were afraid to do. So I think that we're really showing, what we can do now.
I will, just to drop, because we've gotten a few chats. If you do have a question, we will try to get to kind of some questions that you viewers may have. So if you want to just drop it in the chat, or if you don't feel comfortable and you want to send a private message, feel free to. And we'll try to get to some of your questions at the end of the segment. But as we move forward, Tamika and Jennifer, I would ask you, how do you support your Black student athletes' voices, all while holding your coaches and staff accountable simultaneously? And I think as the director of athletics and running an entire department, sometimes that can be conflicting. And so, I ask you, and we'll start with you, I think this, Tamika, and then we'll go to you, Jennifer.
Yes, so it's complicated. And I would just say that, as a director, my responsibility is to set everybody up for success. And so I didn't do that when I was a player. I was shot the ball, so I didn't pass the ball enough, so I didn't get everybody assists. But, as a director now, I really do work diligently to set everybody up for success. And so with our coaches, it starts with them, and it goes back to the mission-driven work. You got to hire the right people. You got to have the right people in place. And sometimes you inherit people, and they may not have all the skills and giftings that they may need, but you have to get the expertise and get the campus resources and set the platform and environment for them to learn and for them to grow and for them to develop. Our job is to develop young people and make sure that they, are completely whole when they leave us, not broken, not oppressed, not, silenced, not, all the things that sometimes they become. And I take great pride in that as a director. I meet a lot of my elite students when they come to visit. I tell the parents what we're going to do. And, you know, I hold myself just as much as my coaches accountable to that. So I think it, like I was alluding to, you know, as a director, I have to be a chameleon. I have to be, you know, in the right places at the right times, but also have to be a visionary to help spearhead that the education, the training, the development that is necessary for coaches, administrators, and support staff, which are really the backbone of the growth and development of our student athletes, to be able to get the confidence and the trust levels built to speak and be able to articulate whatever is concerning them, because there's a whole spectrum of things that happen in a student athlete's life. And those of you on this call that have been one, you understand it. I mean, balancing the demands of high academic institutions and competitive excellence on the playing field, and being ambassadors, all the community service hours that we put in to get that work done. I mean, we taunt that a lot. I mean, we talk about all the stats that as student athletes you bring to programs. And so it's just another way of investing in student athletes' future by making sure that we invest in the professional development and training that coaches need. And, you know, I really believe you have to bring experts to do that. You know, just because I have the Black student experience and just because I'm a Black female athletic director, I don't have the answers, nor can I always be the best voice that, you know, my coaches who I'm holding accountable need to articulate to their student athletes. I am brought in a lot to do that, but I know where my, you know, abilities and authority, you know, begins and end. And I try to make sure that I, you know, do my best to get the right people in the room. And I saw Jen Fry on here. She's one of the best, if y'all don't know who she is, that I've seen and heard, and definitely I share with my coaches and administrators things that are happening. You know, they get access to these calls, and I share with them other professional development and trainings that are going on that I may be attending. I send that to my coaches as well. And so it's a team effort, and everybody that wants to do the work, guess what? They're positioning themselves to do the work. And those that are on the sidelines watching, trying to see what's going to happen, guess what? I'm taking names.
All right. So for me, and I see a lot of my Hornets on this Zoom right now. So shout out to all of my ASU coaches and administrative staff. But I believe it's all about trust and transparency and laying out expectations from the start. You know, my student athletes, I'm open to having calls. I talk to them. I'm on the bus. I'm at all of their home games as well as most of the away games. Building that relationship, and that goes with our coaches and our student athletes. If a student athlete know that you genuinely have their back, they're going to feel empowered to stand up for what they believe is right, and they're going to do it in a respectful, articulate manner. And so it's a two-way street. The same with our coaches, educating them on the importance of understanding that their student athletes are going to have a voice. I'm in Montgomery, Alabama. We're the home of civil rights movement. So of course we had a lot of our student athletes, even though we were not on campus, we had a lot of student athletes who were actively engaged in protesting. And all we asked was for them to be safe. That's all we ask, to be safe. But we're not going to ever tell them not to stand up for what they believe in, because that will go against what Alabama State University is about. And so, you know, I'm always here, and I talk to our coaches all the time about our number one goal. While we love all the championships we win, it's about developing our student athletes once they leave Alabama State. We failed if we do not develop them into leaders in their profession, leaders in their life. If we don't do that, then we have not done our job. And so that I lead with that in everything I do. That is constant conversation with our coaches and our student athletes. They get it. They genuinely understand that we want them to be successful. We provide them access to all types of professional development. And while we are a limited resource institution, we still find a way to get it done, because that is very powerful. Knowledge is powerful. And as a former student athlete, I'm very passionate about providing our student athletes, especially at limited resource institutions and HBCUs, with access. I went to a PWI, the University of North Carolina, where we had a lot of opportunity and access. And I also was a grad student at North Carolina Central and worked in that athletic department. And I saw the disparity. And so my goal while being at a limited resource institution is to be able to give those student athletes at an HBCU the same experience in terms of access to professional development that I received as a student athlete. And so to me, that is going to propel them to go off and to have that voice and be able to use that once they leave Alabama State University.
So it sounds like you kind of have this mentality of, we're teaching you now how to go out and then serve the communities that they, Jennifer, just straight to your point at, that you just stated. We're teaching you how to serve here so that you know how to go out and serve your broad community and to be, standing upright citizens who stand up for not only what they believe in, but for others, and to be advocates for those who may not be willing to stand up for themselves.
Yes, absolutely, Daniel. We want to be a voice for the voiceless. Again, that's what Alabama State is built on. We advocate for, people with limited resources, people who don't have a voice. And that's something that we stress to our student athletes and our coaches. But I wanted to go back. Ashlyn brought up a really good point. When we talk about the student athlete's voice, it was Memphis, their football team, they decided they wanted to wear the Black Lives Matter, a patch on their football uniform. And they had a donor pretty much say that I'm not going to give or I'm not going to support. And to me, that's when administrators have to step in, and the administration at Memphis stepped in and said, hey, we don't need your donation. And they were able to find someone else, but that's part of leadership. You have to be okay with people walking away, because when you're speaking out on things that may shake the landscape, everyone's not going to fall in line with you. And you're going to lose a lot of people who you thought were, your allies. They're going to reveal themselves. And as leaders, we have to be okay with letting those people walk away. And that, again, to me, goes back to that trust. And that trust and that transparency for supporting your student athletes when they do speak out and want to use their platform.
And Daniel, can I just
go ahead, jump right in. I was gonna go, but you beat me to the punch.
Double down on that right there, because as Jennifer said, and she said it perfectly, but I just want to share that one of the things when this uprising happened, I reminded many people in my department that, first of all, I'm over 40, so I've been dealing with this for over 40 years. So this is nothing new to me. Second of all, I reminded them of maybe my second year as the athletic director at the University of California, Riverside. And it was when Colin Kaepernick first kneeled. And I just remember waking up, showing up. It's like that meme where, Black folks got to show up to work today. So I'm the Black athletic director that's got to show up to work today. And I was conflicted in my spirit of, I'm new AD, I'm going to show up fully. I had to pass my chancellor's office to get to my office. And so I just went in and knocked on the door and said, Chancellor, can I chat with you for a minute? Sure. And I asked him, I said, I'm sure you know what's going on in the landscape. Colin Kaepernick, kneeling, they're trying to tie it to the flag and all these things. And he was indifferent about it. I don't remember if he knew or whatever. And I just asked him, I said, what is your position on this? Because I'm getting ready to go over to a population where I know majority of your Black students are a part of that population as the leader. And I need to just make sure I'm public institution and they tear my ass a new one every time I say something, but it's all good. He told me straight up, he said, I agree with your position. No better person than to have a position than you. Tell me what your position is. And so I told him. And that day, immediately, that day, I went to my office. I called an all coaches meeting. And I asked my coaches to let's talk about this scenario. Many of them didn't have a clue, wasn't on their radar, wasn't their business. They just no impact. But I was able to, as a leader, position us, let them understand what my position was for the university, understand what our mission for the university is, our First Amendments, and all these things that we believed in, that if it wasn't really X's and O's, they weren't going to get into. Fast forward, coaches had almost put positions in place where if student athletes kneel, we're going to leave them in the locker room. But I had to just shut all of that down. I was out of town on our first game competition, and one of our student athletes kneeled at the game, and I had a senior leader call me and say, Tamika, no, you're not in town, but a donor just came to me and said, you know, what are we going to do about so-and-so kneeling? And this is just God wisdom, okay? I'm not always in the spirit of God, okay? But this was just God's wisdom. I said to that person, my senior teammate, I said, ask him, what is his concern? How is that challenging him? And that's what they asked him. I never heard another word. The students did what they thought they needed to do. Nobody ever knew about it other than when I've shared about it. And that is leadership. And sometimes, like Jen said, you do have to just be, you know, ready for that pushback, but you got to be fearless. And we have to do that. We got to do that on the behalf of our student athletes for sure, but for our coaches as well. I mean, I'm trying to get them out of the line of fire. And that's going to happen more and more as we see these types of, you know, protests and conversations happening.
Yeah, Tamika and Jen, y'all just dropping some dimes right there. But to your point, Jennifer, you said it earlier, and I've heard Jen Fry say this in an engagement that she spoke on, is that you have other donors lined up who are ready to give you money. So if you lose one donor, there's somebody else who's like, oh, okay, well, I will pay what they were paying, and then I'll pay what I planned on paying as well. And Ashlyn said it earlier, and it's kind of, you know, to her point about her post, I don't want you supporting me if that's the position that you're taking. You know, if you are only wanting to support me as it relates to how I can help our team or our university win games, then I don't want that support at all. And so to bring you, Ashlyn and Sarah, kind of back into the mix, because we have some questions that we're going a little bit off script here, is what are some things, or how can athletic administrators support you and the work that you're doing to use your platform for change?
I guess I'll start. Was the question how can you repeat the question one more time?
What are some things athletic administrators can do to support you and or, you know, other Black student athletes as it relates to, you know, the using your voice and your platform for change?
Okay. Yeah, I think just making athletes feel comfortable to even come to them and have that conversation. Because a lot of times a player and coach's relationship or administration is not that close. And I think that's another reason why a lot of athletes are scared to speak out and say how they feel. But if, you know, administration is letting us know, this is how we run our program, it's an open door policy, you can, you know, always talk about whatever, and you don't have to be scared of repercussions or what might happen because of this. We're going to support you 100%.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Sarah, especially with the support thing. It's just like, I need to feel supported. I need to feel comfortable coming to you. And I don't want it to be the first time I meet you is because something awful has happened and I need to speak up on it. So definitely making those relationships and making it known that you are more than welcome to come in and we're going to support you 110%. And I know something that we have done as athletes and a lot of other people have done too is like come to their coaches and administrators and talked about different ways they want to continue to have this conversation throughout season and the things that we can do to show our support for the movement and the injustices. And so whenever athletes come to you with these suggestions, just listen. It's always, just have a conversation with them. Don't shut them down. Don't just be like, absolutely not, but listen. And it's okay if some of the things that they suggest you don't necessarily agree with, but if you also feel that there's a better way to help them and support them and like, hey, this might not be the best way, but if you want to do this and this is why, that would be really beneficial because we have a whole bunch of different ideas and we're trying to figure it out just as much as anyone. We don't have the answers because if we had the answers, we wouldn't be in the situation. So I would just say support them and have those conversations with them.
And Ashlyn, to your point, and I think a lot of people get this confused, and especially white people, is those conversations are still uncomfortable for Black people to have. I think oftentimes white people believe that, it's only uncomfortable for them, but as, a man of color, as a Black man, it's sometimes hard for me to have to sit down and have another conversation with you about how I feel and to share with you my emotions as it relates to a specific subject. And so, Sarah and Jennifer, with your experiences at HBCU specifically currently, how has the landscape shifted at HBCUs as it relates to this topic, if it has shifted at all, in using your voice? And Sarah, you can start, and then, Jennifer, if you don't mind tagging on the back end of that question.
I definitely think as an athlete, I got the opportunity to see the shift happen kind of up close and personal. Back when I committed to Howard, a lot of athletes just wanted to go to top programs because that's where they thought that they could be most successful. And, back then Howard wasn't really that good, but they were also my only offer. So they took a chance on me, and I just wanted to make an impact as soon as I got there. And what I saw over the years was that a lot of more people started transferring into my conference, like people that I knew. And then it was a lot more skilled recruits coming in. And then the competition just got a lot better. Same thing on the boys' side and with other sports as well. And I think that, now a 5-star recruit just committed to Howard. And I think that that was just something that was building up over time. It was bound to happen.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah. I feel as if it's a lot of excitement right now. I think that HBCUs, there's a lot of buzz. People are starting to really see what an HBCU can offer. I like to say I've been a part of the best of both worlds. I've loved both of my experiences, going to a PWI as well as going to an HBCU. But I think during this time of social unrest, people are, especially student athletes of color, are feeling more comfortable, and they're really taking a look. And what I'm telling my coaches is that, we have to shoot our shot. We have to go out there and shoot our shot, because I was never recruited by an HBCU. I didn't know. I'm from Michigan. I really didn't know a lot about them. They never recruited me. I didn't learn about HBCUs really until I came down to North Carolina in the South. And as HBCU, as coaches, we have to figure out ways to be strategic in how we recruit, because these student athletes are looking for a place where they can feel safe, a place where they can be comfortable and be their true selves. You see a lot of people, a lot of student athletes at PWIs talking about having to code switch and not be who they are when they go into the athletic facility, and vice versa. And luckily, I never experienced that when I went to Carolina, but I'm hearing it and I'm seeing it more when I, talk to student athletes. And I have a lot of friends who are coaches now at PWIs, and they talk to me about that. They're not comfortable. And so there's excitement. We were just able to get some really good recruits to come in that people didn't think would come to Alabama State. Howard, a 5-star recruit. I think you're going to see the landscape change some. If you have talent, you're going to be found. And I feel that same way as an administrator. When I left DePaul to go to North Carolina A&T, a lot of people, and people who were graduates of HBCUs, were like, why would you do that? Why would you leave a PWI, a wonderful institution in DePaul, and go to an HBCU, a limited resource? Why would you do that? And I really genuinely feel like if you are comfortable in your skill set, you're connected, and you build yourself with the right team, you're going to have success. And I think student athletes are seeing that one recruit can change that whole trajectory of a program. And we're going to start to see that if a lot of these Power Fives, let's not put out, a lot of them put out statements. And I hope that it's not just for optics. I really hope that there's going to be some true change at these PWIs. But if there isn't, I really do feel as if these student athletes are going to continue to protest, as you alluded to, Daniel. There may be some people not playing, people deciding to walk away, because you're a young lady that was a basketball student athlete at Liberty. you know, she ended up leaving because Liberty did not align with her values and the way they were addressing the social injustices that were taking place. But that's going to be more frequent. And I think for HBCUs, we have to be prepared to receive. And we have to make sure that we have our ducks in a row, because this is the time for us to build our enrollment, to, you know, really showcase what our institutions have. While we know it, those who are there, I love Alabama State. We know that we have something special. Now is the time to get our brand out to the masses. And by having some of those recruits, by having a Mo Williams, an NBA championship coach, having Coach Richie Beam, who is one of the all-time best track coaches who's on this call, we are going to be able to do that and start to get our brand out there where people are going to take even more notice in what's going on in the HBCU landscape.
Well, Jennifer, I know you've been having conversations with your student athletes, because you said shooting your shot, and I know that that is a young person term. So you have definitely been having some kind of conversations with your student athletes.
I'm kind of young too. I like to still, I'm young at heart now. I mean, I have a 5-year-old, so she keeps me on my toes.
Okay. Well, I hope she's not shooting her shot in the terms that the young people use it, you know, that she outside shooting the hoops.
No.
Okay,
She likes volleyball and soccer. So I'm gonna have to Ashley, you may have to give her some lessons there.
And so and you kind of walked us right into this next question. So thank you, Jennifer. And this is for Ashley and Tamika, who are currently at predominantly white institutions. What are some suggestions, and Ashley, we'll start with you, that you have for Black student athletes at PWIs to learn their voice and then be able to use it?
I would just say, just trying to find the right people and resources that your campus has to offer. You know, like in my campus, we have a diversity and inclusion place where we can go, we can have these conversations, or just find someone else on the campus who's going to make you feel comfortable, that you feel comfortable enough to talk to. And so I think for me, like, I feel very comfortable talking to my coaches. I have a lot of Black people within my academic area of school. And so going to them and having those conversations and talking about the best way to go about things, and then going from there to figure out how we as a whole can help change things, and how I can go about using my voice without disrespecting or doing anything too crazy. But yeah, I would say find the right resources on your campus and find the right people to talk to.
And I agree with Ashlyn on that one. And again, I think it goes back to trust and just building those relationships. And you just can't wait until there's an issue to build those relationships. I would love to extend an opportunity for all 350 of my student athletes to feel like they can come talk to me about anything. Not that I'm going to always give them the answer that they want to hear. I have this internal pulse that, you know, when they want to, you know, talk about other stuff, they go find other people to talk to. But when they want to talk about some real stuff, they come talk to me, because they know I'm going to give it to them real. And so you just have to, you know, like Ashlyn said, I mean, we're on campuses. I'm on a campus with 25,000 students and 3,000 faculty and staff. Like, if you can't find a person that you can relate to, I mean, we're doing some things so totally wrong. And so I don't want to be the first line of communication, but I don't want a student athlete to ever feel like they can't reach out to me. At the beginning of my student athlete meetings, I give them my cell phone number, and I tell them, look, I don't need to be your first call, but if you ever get in a jam, before you get in the jam and you need to call somebody, you don't feel comfortable calling somebody else, call me. And that's just, you know, how I deal with them. But again, for me, it goes back to hiring the right people. I just can't speak to that enough, because when you've got the right people with the right heart, with the right mind, and right plans for our student athletes, they're going to always be positioning them for success. They're going to always be looking out for them holistically. And I talk about the whole student athlete all the time, because that's one of the things that I was able to embody when I was a student athlete. I was a transfer student athlete. So I started out at a predominantly white institution that gave me the bells and whistles, but didn't give me life. And I transferred to an HBCU and got all of my life and got the relationships that I needed that took me to where I am today. And when people say HBCU made me, believe them when they say it, because they don't sugarcoat it for you. They fill every void and every gap that is possible. And I know Jen understands this because she's doing, and I watch her and marvel at how she does it so well as an athletic director. But we need that in coaches. We need that in coaches. I talk about, coaches have a 4-year plan. As an athletic director, mine is a 40-year plan. I have more of my student athletes that come back after years needing or knowing where to find me to get help, support, guidance, whatever life brings it, to them. And it's not always going to be social justice issues. It may be family, matters, and it may be other job opportunities. And so we just got to make sure that we're really caring about our student athletes in a way that we're going to develop and show them compassion and show them that we are interested in their competitiveness academically, athletically, and as they champion to be world changers. And that's ultimately what I think all of our roles are as educators.
Well, Tamika, since you're right here, we'll jump right into the next question. And then Jennifer, if you want to, chime in with your thoughts. As a Black woman in a leadership role, what has been the hardest part of you supporting your student athletes during this time?
Let me tell you, the hardest part for me is they like my kids. I got a 16-year-old son. He tell me what he want to tell me. My daughter, 12. She tell me more than I want to hear. And so trying to figure out that sweet spot of what they really trying to tell me and what they don't tell me, what they tell me, it's been the hardest challenge. I just really hope that student athletes feel comfortable just telling it like it is, telling the whole story. What do you need from us? And a lot of times when I can have conversation with my student athletes, I'll ask them, I'll listen. I don't always respond and have an answer right away, but I will ask them, with this information that you provided me, what do you expect to be the result? How do you really want me to help? Because I may have my own thoughts of how to help them, and I'll do that, but I want to make sure that at the end of the day, that I've given them what they've sought me out to give them. So the biggest challenge has really been getting them to open up enough to give me the complete and all the depth of information that they need to give me so that I can really help them totally with whatever the issues and concerns are that they bring forth.
Okay, so the biggest challenge for me, I have two. So the first would be really, I guess, supporting our student athletes in their wanting to protest, but then I worry because I watch the news, and a lot of my student athletes do reside, in major cities. They're not just in the Southeast, they're West Coast, they're New York. And so, encouraging them to go out there and be vocal and to protest, but also it's a fear because I want them to be safe. And I fear for their safety because they could just be innocent bystanders and something could happen to them just because they're Black and they're out there standing up for what they believe. We've seen it happen on the news just, recently with the Breonna Taylor. And so, really trying to, again, support them, but articulating to them the need to be safe and aware that they are a student athlete, and that when you're a student athlete comes that visibility. And you may not, you just want to be with your friends, but because you represent Alabama State and you are a student athlete, there's an increased amount of responsibility. So that's one. And then not trying to, after watching George Floyd's murder, I was extremely emotional. I could not sleep. And so not trying to take how I feel when they want to have conversations, and really just listening because, I deal with, because we're an HBCU, I still have student athletes who are Caucasian, who are Latino. We have a very diverse group of student athletes. We don't just have all Black student athletes. We're probably the most diverse team in the SWAC, as well as our coaches. And so really educating them, because they may not feel as worked up or as passionate as I am about the situation, and really trying to articulate in a way that I can connect with all. Because while I may think that this person is here, they may really be here because they don't understand. And so really trying to talk to them about the importance of the why this is wrong, why you need to be there to support your student athlete, and then vice versa for our student athletes who are not African-American, why you need to be there for your student athlete, why they're going to be looking for you for your support as well during these times.
Thank you. Sarah and Ashley, I see y'all over there listening, so we're gonna bring y'all back on into the conversation. And the question, that we have is, has your team, and Sarah, I'm sure you still had some communication with your teammates, even though you graduated, but has your team been welcoming to your position and your stance? How have you navigated those who might be opposed to you protesting or might not agree with what's going on? And then the last part, you guys have kind of touched on already, as as it relates to what do you need from administrators and coaches. So I would say just kind of answer those first two questions on how your team has been as it relates to your stance, and then how have you navigated those who are opposed to your perspective.
I guess I'll start, but Howard's women basketball team has been very supportive. They always let me know that they'll support anything I do, and I feel like the school does that in general, and I feel 100% comfortable there as well. And for people that are opposed to the things that I'm saying, they must not be for me, because there's nothing wrong with the things that I'm saying. It's nothing but the truth, and if you have a problem with it, then you're just not for me, and that's okay. I let it be known, because there were some people that had a problem with it, but it's not a problem. And from administration and coaches, like I said, I've had that support.
I'm not really a part of the volleyball group chat anymore because I have graduated from that. But however, the basketball group chat everyone on my team has been very supportive of everything. There's not one person who has said they opposed it. However, there have been one or two people who don't understand it, which is totally okay, because they've been like, hey, can you explain this to me so I know, so I understand, because they want to understand and they want to be able to support us and help us however they can. And there's nothing wrong with not being fully aware or understanding what things are going on, because at the end of the day, they don't go through them. They are not people of color. So it's okay to ask those questions and have those conversations. But I would say I've had the support from everyone, from my coaching staffs, both coaching staffs, to administration. And I just feel that if you are opposed to the situations going on, then you need to really sit back and you need to educate yourself, because there's no reason that you should feel that humans don't deserve human rights. And so I would just say to the people who oppose you, just try and get them to educate themselves, because at the end of the day, you can't make people do something that they don't want to do. And if they're going to listen to respond and not listen to learn, then you can't really do anything about it.
Ashley, while I have you here, we have a question specifically for you. Has student athletes been able to partner with OU Unheard or other campus organizations to build support across campus? I know it's summertime, so you can answer that based off of, during the school year. And then I would, add on to that, how has that been going, and what are kind of some of the things that you all have been working on?
I'm not 110. I don't have a for sure answer on that. I'm not sure. A lot of people aren't in Norman right now, but I will say that we've had some organizations who actually set up a protest for us in Norman. And so we all walked and we came and we were on campus and we had discussions. Our administration has been really big in supporting us. And so we've also had SAIL, which is basically our Student Athletes in Action, and leadership is like, we've been talking about having subcommittees for people who want to make real change and discussing these things. And so that's the most that I have right now. We haven't really been back on campus, but we've definitely been having the conversations as to how we're going to go about things when we do get back on campus. So.
Thank you for that. Let's see here. I think we have a question for Tamika and Jennifer. Going beyond ensuring student athletes feel protected and safe at the institution, how do you protect and enable them to use their voices towards members of the community and the national level? And if you need to take a second, because these are where I'm going, a few questions from the chat. So take a second if you need to gather your thoughts. I'll do some filler space right here. And just remember, if you have any questions, to please put them in the chat. And if you don't feel comfortable sending them to the entire chat, you can send it to me privately.
So Daniel, you said the question was about encouraging our student athletes to use their voice in the local community.
Yeah,
Did I miss the beat on that?
No. It's pretty much kind of the general idea of the question. How do they use their voices towards members in the community and on a national level?
I think it's, what I've seen from our student athletes at Alabama State is that they are very vocal on Twitter. And so they do a lot of conversing and speaking out on Twitter. I talk to our coaches a lot about articulating to them how to communicate. We don't want them getting into Twitter beefs with people, but you can say what you need to say and then walk away. We also do a lot of community service, so we're very visible. And I actually stole this phrase from Tamika, we commit to connect. That's something since I started at Alabama State, I'm really big on connecting, blame it on my fundraising background, but I believe in committing to connecting with individuals. And at Alabama State, what people don't realize is that a lot of HBCUs are in predominantly Black areas, but at Alabama State, literally right across campus or across the street from our campus, we have this community called Old Cloverdale, which is a predominantly white area. And, we have to be willing to go out and invite those folks into our community of Alabama State because it's been so separate throughout the years. And so in order for us to have these conversations and where people can feel comfortable expressing how they feel when these social injustices occur, it goes back to that connecting with all type of people. And so we encourage our student athletes to get out into the community. Our teams do a wonderful job of community service, not just in the inner city, but all over Montgomery. And so that is something that we take pride in. And then what they're saying, we want them to be thoughtful in their expressions, and they're doing a very good job. We're not on campus. We're hoping we get back in August, but I monitor them from afar, as well as our coaches have been great at checking in on the student athletes and talking to them every other day to make sure that they're okay and letting them know that, it's okay to not be okay as well, but we have your back, and that, continue to express yourself and use your platform positively to affect change.
Yeah, I would ditto everything that Jen has said. And one of the things that I intentionally did probably about 2 years ago now, when I could no longer manage my own socials, was hire a strategic communications person that could do it at a high level. And so outside of my information team that scours the social media of our student athletes, I have a point of contact, our senior associate for strategic communication, that really helps student athletes and coaches and myself develop thoughts and just make sure that we're being constructive and positive in the way that we represent our brand. I have a student athlete group that has reached out to me since all of this has started in the last month that I am leading directly. They've asked for that. And basically what I do is the student athletes tell me what their thoughts are, what they want to do. They wanted to do a statement. They wanted to have a meeting with just Black, coaches and student athletes. And I just say yay or nay and run it to my strategic senior associate for strategic communications so that they can, make sure that they take the legs on it. So it's almost like a conduit teamwork and really allowing them to continue to get comfortable and continue to be thoughtful about what they really want to be doing in this moment. But we talk a lot about, the demands and, being at a large public institution, we have demands that have come from every corner of our campus. Thank God they're not coming to me. They're going to the chancellor's office, but I'm having to, dial in on a lot of it. And, but, for our student athletes, we want to make sure that they understand what they want in this moment. If there are things that, they feel like that are inequalities or gaps in the experiences that we want to promote for them, we want them to talk about it. Like, this is the time. It's nobody should be feeling uneasy or uncomfortable. And if so, I don't think it's on the student athletes. I think it's on us as coaches and administrators to loosen and lighten that up for them. And so I text with 5 student athletes that represent my sports, from men's and women's basketball, volleyball, soccer, and so forth. And I say yay or nay to things ideas they have. I give them wise counsel on things that I think may trip them up, publicly, or, just not going to set them up for success. And we talk about it, and so they can get understanding. And most of the time, student athletes are brilliant. They get it, but you do have to take time to have that dialogue with them. So I think that's very important as the student athletes that are on this call, that as Ashlyn said, find that person. It may not be your athletic director, but find that person that, and it may not be your coach, but find that person that you can really have those. I mean, and I'll clue you in on this. As athletic directors and coaches, we have executive coaches too. We have people that we bounce thoughts and ideas off on too. So this is a part of getting ready for the real world and being able to make some real change. And I'm hoping that out of all of this, student athletes will really get down on campuses to make the policy changes that are needed to make sure that their experiences are great. I mean, when I'm talking about policy changes, I'm talking about the number of Black and brown faculty that they have in their classrooms and in their course, work. For a 4-year career, they may not see one. I'm talking about the opportunities that they get for postgraduate scholarships. We send NCAA stuff all the time. How many of us are getting selected for those opportunities? So all of that matters. And so it's just a matter of making sure that we expose all the hidden rules. There are a lot of hidden rules out there. And when you identify one, expose it and find the person that will be able to help you to push past it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, pushing past it is the hard part. It's a great segue to a question we have is, if you are a white coach and you are uncomfortable to start the conversation with your team, whether it's racially diverse or not, what are some tips and tangible takeaways to help them start the conversation? And so I will chime in here, and I know I'm hosting, but I'm dropping gems too. I will tell you, Gen Fry Talks has a literal resource page on her website. If you go to genfrytalks.com, that has resources for coaches, administrators, student athletes. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And so I think that is one step that they can take to start the conversation. And then I think the first thing is to just gather your team and to just sit down and have the conversation. Now I'm going to stop and I'm going to pitch that. And Ashley, I want you to jump in here first and give kind of some details. And then Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and jump in, please feel free.
I would just say, if you're uncomfortable having this conversation with your student athletes, then you should probably reevaluate the relationship that you have with your student athletes. And I say that simply, and I say that simply because if you have a relationship with your student athletes, it's so easy to ask them how they're doing. Not even just how they're doing within the racial injustice, but how are you doing? That should be the conversation that you have with them frequently, whether it's social injustice is going on or not. And so for me, for the people who I'm close with and I have that relationship with, and they've come up to me and asked me, how are you doing? Because they care about me and they really want to know know, it's been a simple conversation. And it's not uncomfortable when you're having that conversation with the right people and with people you know who love you. So I would just say, first of all, just like make sure you have that relationship with them, because when you do, it's just such a simple conversation to have. So that's my input on it.
I think Ashlyn hit it with the mic drop. I think that if you're a coach, you know, and you don't, obviously, if you don't feel comfortable having that conversation, you need to reevaluate and look at who's in your circle. I'm really big on representation matters. And at a lot of these PWIs, you don't see a lot of people of color in leadership positions, and you don't see them as head coaches. And so, you know, if you are a white coach and you are coaching a team, you know, a mixed team or a team that has a few, that should be easy. You recruited them, you should know them as a person. You should have developed that relationship. But if not, I was going to drop Jen Fry in there as well. You know, her resources are phenomenal. And then maybe talking to a sport administrator. Not everyone has a way with words, and some people are just scared to say the wrong thing. They want to say something, but they just don't want to, they're fearful of saying the wrong thing. So maybe talking to your sport administrator or your AD about kind of how to have that conversation. But I do think that as coaches, you know, looking at who's in your circle, you know, do you have other people of color if you're Caucasian that you're interacting with? And then what does the makeup of your department look like? You know, I just think back to when I was a student athlete, it was not a lot of people of color at the institution I attended for undergrad. And it's unfortunately, it's still that way. And so, you know, our student athletes deserve to see people that look like them. They deserve, period, to see people that look like them in the athletic department. And to me, that's where we have to start, with making people comfortable having these conversations.
And let me just add there, Ashlyn and Jen hit it spot on, but I just want to put a pin in, this is self-inventory work. So it's like, you know, don't make me the exhausted Black athletic director trying to, you know, give you all of my magic. Like, you got to try to, you know, do a self-assessment of, like, you know, your circle of friends and people that you're hanging out. And it's okay. You could be 40 and change your, you know, add a, you know, person of color in your circle. I think it to me, it kind of makes my flesh crawl sometimes, because as a Black woman, I have been just thrown out here in the wolves with uncomfortableness all of my life. And nobody's ever tried to, you know, help me figure out how I survive it. And now we catering and trying to help everybody else figure out how to survive what we've been experiencing. So I say that with the most love and compassion that I can show, but it's real, and it's coming from a place of just, you know, the care and concern that I have for the mental health that is being challenged for people like me that, you know, have lived this every day. And so I took the responsibility when I went to the University of California, Riverside, to build a diverse team. I mean, nobody told me to do that. It was just, you know, what I thought was right. It was the mission of the university. And so my student athletes, they can come talk to a Black woman and get that magic. They can go talk to a Black man, get that magic. They can go to my Hispanic sister and get that magic. They can go to my Hispanic brother, get that magic. They can go to my white sister and get that magic on the senior level any day they want to. And I constantly remind them of that every time I talk to student athletes. And I constantly remind our coaches that every time we have coaches meetings, that you're not going to have the answers all the time for your student athletes. You've got to be able to free them up to go, not be so fearful and scared that somebody's going to say the wrong thing, or, you know, your program is going to get called out, that they can go talk to other people. This is a part of maturation. This is a part of their matriculation. They deserve it. And that representation matters on so many levels.
Absolutely, that representation means a lot. You know, our Black student athletes need to see people that look like them in high roles and, you know, positions of leadership, being decision makers, so that they know that they can too be that person one day. I can sit in the chair. I can be the one delegating, I can be the one responsible and taking on some of the responsibility that the university delegates to our department specifically, and outside of our athletic department, you know, whether it's being a lawyer, doctor, a police officer, whatever the case may be. I think that you're deadly accurate. We do have a question.
And
Go ahead.
Daniel,
Yes.
before you move on, what you just said reminds me, for any coaches and administrators that are on this call, I take great pride in learning my campus and navigating my campus, not for myself, but for my student athletes and for my coaches. My coaches and student athletes know they can call me about anything related to our campus, and I got a connection for them. If you don't do anything but just start your short list today of Black and brown, you know, white allies, you know, people that will be advocates and be able to help you in this work, that you can point your student athletes to, that you can point your coaches to. I've been preaching this is prime time for our coaches and student athletes to get connected to the campus in a way that they wouldn't be able to with the demands of having practice and games. We don't have none of that going on right now. So that has been, I've done that for 5 years at Riverside. I mean, I'm calling favors in from the standpoint of students not getting accepted into colleges. And I'm saying, well, I know the dean of that college. Let me call and find out why. And finding out why and saying, okay, well, we can reapply and get another shot at it for the winter, you know, because that matters to that student athlete. And I'm couching that with in this season where there's not sports going on, my student athletes' mental health is very important to me. And for them to get a rejection letter right now is not a good thing. I need to know why. So all of these things are just part of taking care and looking out for our student athletes in a way that is outside of sport and outside of anything that is self-gratifying, the things that we're going to promote and put in our newsletters and post it up on the, you know, website. It's for their benefit.
Absolutely. And so I would pitch this to Sarah, you know, if you want to jump in here, and then Ashlyn. And the question is, how is the voice of the Black student athlete different than your white counterparts? What do you think are the differences in your voice as opposed to your white teammates or white students that you're on campus with? And then Jennifer and Tamika, after they go, if you guys have some thoughts on that, please feel free to jump in.
I think a lot of the times, Black athletes are just not taken seriously. Even though we have been through a lot in history, people for some reason think that we can just endure anything, and that's just not the case. And then when we do speak up, we come off as angry, or people don't understand where it's coming from. But I think right now we just want to be heard, and we just want to be treated fairly. We want our lives to matter. You know, this doesn't seem like too much to ask for, but I think the more that everyone speaks up, you know, everyone raises awareness, spreads information, and, you know, has these very important conversations, the better we all, you know, will be off, because the time is now. You know, like, this is a very important time in history, and, you know, we just want to be heard. That's really it.
I would say, I mean, I agree with Sarah too, and I think a big difference is, I think that white student athletes are also struggling with understanding how powerful their voice can be, even though this may not directly affect them the way that it affects us. Because I think in order to raise awareness for everyone in all races, especially for someone who may be against this entire situation, they're not gonna, as much as it sucks, they're not gonna listen to a Black person. Because how is a Black person going to try to tell someone who doesn't like them that this is why it's wrong? So white student athletes have just as much power in their voices as Black student athletes do, and Black students. And so I would just say that it's important for the white student athletes who want to help us to speak up, just as it's important for us to speak up for ourselves.
All right. So as we wrap up, I would say that, you know, we have had a very deep conversation. And so I will allow, let's see here, who's going to go first for our last question? Everybody's going to be chiming in on this one. And the question before I guess I figure out an order is, what are 2 suggestions each of you have for an administrator or a Black student athlete who wants to use their voice? And so actually what I'll do is I'll let whoever decides they want to chime in first go ahead. So what are 2 suggestions you have for an administrator or a Black student athlete who wants to use their voice?
Okay,
All right,
I guess I'll go first.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. My first advice for a student athlete would be, or I guess administrator too, but don't wait to see what everybody else is doing. You can lead and say something that you believe in and feel strongly about, and there's no problem with that. And then my other advice would be, was some advice that I got from somebody, was that if you don't say and fight for what you want, you'll never get it. And, you know, for me, I'm not the loudest person in the room. I'm not the most outspoken, but when something's on my heart, you know, and I feel need to express that, I do that. So that would be my advice.
Okay. Those were some great points of advice that Sarah gave. I just want to add to it by saying for the student athletes and our coaches to think before you speak. You know, really know what you want your message to be and the demographic that you're appealing to. And then, you know, don't act from a place of fear. I say speak from your, you know, be passionate and let it come from a place of passion and love. But, you know, sometimes when we get super emotional, those Twitter fingers come out and we say things. So I say, you know, take a step back, you know, gather your composure, really think through, because your platform as student athletes, as coaches, it's huge and it's far reaching. And so once you put it out there, you can't get it back. So make sure that the message that you're putting out there is really going to speak to what you're feeling inside and what you want to articulate to the masses.
Is this like a post-up move, Ashlyn? You gonna beat me out? I'll beat you out. What?
She going for the buzzer beater.
I'm gonna yield to you, Ashlyn. I was gonna yield to you now. Come on, if you don't.
All right. Yeah, I agree with both Sarah and Jennifer. I would just definitely say make sure that what you're putting out there is what you intend for it to be perceived as. I'd also just say, you know, think about the things that are going, for me, I had a lot of emotions just like talking about everything that's going on, and like it has ranged from like anger to a whole bunch of other things. And I don't want I don't want to just say things out of emotion and just be like in the heat of the moment and then post something that is up there forever. So just take some time to think about how you're feeling and how you're doing and what's really going on and how you want other people to see you. And I think social media is such a powerful thing, especially in today's age. And I feel like I'm really capable of helping portray who I am as a person, and letting people in to know who I am more personally with my social media. And so I would just say, really think about the things that you want to say and just come from the heart.
Good deal. I think all of us are saying the same thing as it relates to that emotional intelligence. That was going to be probably the main thing for me is, you know, just to, you know, you got to move from being angry and upset and stuck in statements and, you know, all that stuff to some real action. And so understanding, you know, understanding, you know, what is the change that you're trying to see and knowing who can help you. This is a beautiful season and opportunity because we're in a pandemic of all kinds of sorts right now. And so really just being thoughtful and organizing yourself to understand, you know, your why and the change you want to see, and those people that can really help you, I think will take your work and your platform a long way. and then the emotional intelligence piece of that is so critically important. I just can't speak to it enough because I understand the balance that is needed in all of this. I just can't even express how I went from working 10 hours a day to now being on Zooms for 12 hours a day, being on the West Coast and the East Coast time. So my mom comes in sometimes, she's like, you working from sun up to sundown? I'm like, yeah, it's still early in Cali. I'm in Atlanta right now, but balancing your well-being, you know, in this movement is so critically important, because if you don't rest, Jen was saying she's not sleeping well. I hadn't slept as well as I could sleep either. Exercise, you know, you can't stand for the people and for the movement if you don't take care of yourself. So I employ all of you all to, you know, get your healthy eating going, you know, spend some time with friends, do some drive-by, whatever you can do that won't be a violation to what I typically do with Daniel when I see him out in the street sometimes. But it's important for all of us to take the time that we need to take care of ourselves too. So.
So what I just want to thank you all for joining us. To Tamika, Ashlyn, Sarah, and Jennifer, I really appreciate you for joining us in this important conversation. I do also want to note that, I don't know if people notice, but we do also need to create spaces for our Black women to be in positions to where they can speak and to have a seat at the table and to really include them. So I appreciate all of you for joining us, for giving us your expertise and your thoughts on how the voice of the Black student athlete can help to create change. And I want to leave with this. So after this, everyone is free to go. If your voice had no power, they wouldn't try to silence you. And so with that, we conclude this webinar. I appreciate you all for coming, and I hope you all continue to stay safe and continue to promote change.
Thank you
Thanks,
for having me again.
everyone.
Thank you.